Hey everybody, welcome back to Friday Live with Matt and Tim. Um, Man, it's good to be back. It's good to have us both back in.
Hey everybody,
Oh, hold on a
welcome
second.
back to Friday Live with Matt and Tim.
See, that's what happens. I go away for 1 week, and everything is all messed up. But I do want to thank Sean for helping Tim get online.
Yeah.
Last week, I'm thankful that you guys got to continue to have some good teaching from my brother here. I feel like a one-armed paper hanger trying to run this thing, but and talk at the same time. But I do want to invite you, if you're out there watching, I'm trying to check and see if anybody's out there actually, watching. But let us know you're out there. We'll try to give you a shout out and let you know, that we actually, care about you being there and that sort of a thing. But
We do care that you're out there.
we really do. One of the things that it's been interesting, I know, for us, sometimes it seems like nobody's watching, nobody's paying attention, and then we'll just see a couple of weeks later, we'll see a bunch of views will pop up, or somebody will say something to us. We saw this on the podcast, and like, oh, I didn't even know, you were watching, which is really encouraging to us, just to keep at it and keep going. Kind of makes you feel like. Sean just told me the air conditioner's kind of loud. See, Sean just texted me and said the air conditioner's in the way. We had this big debate about it gets really hot in here with the air off, but the audio man says turn the air off. So there we go. We'll turn the air off. Do keep in prayer with us though. I'm trying to finish a new office. It's going to be bigger. We're going to have a little bit different setup. We'll be able to leave the air on, which is exciting in the summertime. Really looking forward to it, and hoping that'll come through. Oh, and I didn't tell you about this. I'm about to set forth I'm calling them our translation team. Sean says it's better. Our translation team, meaning that we've got 3 people here on the state side who speak Spanish, can translate, and then we've got 3 people on the Mexico side that are going to proofread it for us, and they're going to translate Brenna's book into Spanish.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm looking at what it would cost to get that a new language edition done of it, so that we can distribute that in Mexico as well, some of the pastors and things. So lots going on. Got to go on vacation. That was so cool.
Someday I'll have one of those.
Yeah, nah, you don't need one. Margie needs a vacation from you. But we'd never really been on a vacation before, especially just the 2 of us, and so it was a good time. But it was good to be back. Thanks, Tim, for filling in for us. But trying to think, is there any other ministry news before we jump into Romans? Not that I can think of, really.
Well, we all hit the ground almost doing 1,000
know.
miles an hour, and we were strung out when we got back. So we hadn't really been able to, you didn't go to Mexico the first time, so you were
Right.
always correlating and putting stuff together, and this
Yep.
time you were on the trip, and
Yeah,
and
it's
then
different.
the schedule when you come back home and you have to start doing real work and all that kind of thing, and it gets hard to put it back together.
I will say this, not this Sunday, but the next Sunday evening, July the 25th at 6 o'clock, we'll be in the evening service at Central Baptist Church in Athens, sharing the trip. They partnered with us on this trip and helped fund it, and so we're going to be giving report it's my dad's church, mom and dad's church. They're in Athens at Central Baptist Church in Athens, over on Prairieville, behind what used to be Safeway. I see those Facebook memes. It's like age yourself by telling something that doesn't exist anymore, or whatever. And I was like, my church used to be behind Safeway. Well, Safeway's not there anymore. But then we get to Hawaii, everything's a Safeway.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
on the
Safeway's
West
all over the
Coast.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
everywhere.
were excited to go to Safeway. But anyway, 6 o'clock next Sunday, or a week from Sunday, the 25th, we'll be sharing the ministry, sharing some videos and pictures, and talking about how the ministry went. So if you're free and available and you want to come and join and just to hear the report, they would love to see you and love
that's a good idea.
And that'd be a way for us to to do that. So if you're even at the Bridge Fellowship, if you're watching and you like, well, we don't have evening service, you're free, and your home group will probably be finished by then too. Load the family up. They've got a nursery.
Take the home group.
Take the whole home group over. That'd be a great idea.
Yeah, that is a great idea.
Just have a home group outing, field trip, road trip, and go to Central Baptist Church in Athens. Then they would be encouraged by your being there, and it would also just show unity in the body. One of the things I did want to kind of talk about today, as I was out on vacation, one of the things I got to do in the morning, which is difficult to do when you have kids and all that kind of stuff, you guys know how it is I got to spend my morning Bible time out on the balcony looking at the Pacific Ocean, and that was exciting. And I would actually get out there it was 7 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock, which was noon here. And
Right.
so I actually got to listen to the podcast as part of my devotion last week, and that was kind of neat.
Oh, wow.
But I spent that time studying Romans, and I took some notes and things that I do want to share. And I may go back and cover some of the stuff, Tim, that you covered last week. 'Cause I mean, not like redo it, but I may hit on some things, and if we do, let's just keep moving. But I wanted to share a few things out of Romans 3 before we get into Romans 4.
Yeah.
Tim made a statement as we were. I'm trying to catch all y'all's comments, but Tim made a statement before we got on the air about how it's real easy when you're going verse by verse and you're going through a text to lose the context. I know one of the things we teach when we're teaching people how to study is if you're going to do a book study or even whatever you're doing, to read the context. I mean, at minimum, read the chapter. It's better to read the whole book. I mean, if you're going to study something out of Romans, read the whole book a couple of times.
Yeah.
I know, it's funny, I had a thing pop up on my Facebook feed the other day from back at Martins Mill Baptist Church, it was years ago, and the thing said, I wonder if people from MMBC have done their homework. And I remembered we were studying through 1 John, and I had asked everybody to read 1 John every day, the entire book, or the entire 1 John every day. And it made a huge difference in having the context as we talked about it. And what we're wanting to talk about, Paul's in chapter 3 and chapter 4 of Romans, he's unpacking, you're not justified by the law, you're not getting in because you're a Jew, it's because of faith in Jesus. That's kind of what he's doing. But the context of it goes all the way back to Romans 1, where he says the wrath of God is coming against all unrighteousness. And he's painting this picture, and one of the notes that I wrote was that he in verse 20 of Romans 3, if you're going to read it in the New American Standard, Romans 3:20.
Romans 3:20. Because by the works of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight. For through the law comes the knowledge of sin, manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets.
The thing that hit me as I was doing my studying is that in the world that he's writing in, the Orthodox Jews spent their life differentiating between themselves and the Gentiles. I mean, a bunch of their laws were to separate. We're not the Gentiles, we're the Jews, and that identifies us as such. I had a customer one time, we were at Vantone, he was an Orthodox Jew, and we would go and bring in drinks and stuff for them to taste. Well, he had his kosher refrigerator, and then the refrigerator that we were allowed to interact with, because we were Gentiles. And, and there was some of that kind of stuff that was, there was just this separation. They were dogs and this and that. And not only that, but you see in the writings that the Jewish tradition was that we are the children of Abraham. We have the oracles of God. We are the promised people, and we kind of get a free pass to some degree, so long as we keep the law. But there was this kind of idea, and he just blows the whole world system up for the Jew in that statement. In verse 20, in the Christian Standard Bible, it says, "For no one will be justified in his sight by the works of the law. And what that told the Jews is you can do everything right. We were talking about this just a few minutes ago. You can be the best Jew ever. We would think of it like you're the best Christian ever. I mean, you're doing all the things and still not be justified in his sight and in danger of this coming wrath.
Well, in practical terms, you can look at it like I hold a church office. I don't hold a church office, but for sake of argument, I hold a church office. I'm an elder, or I'm a deacon, or wherever it is you go, and you hold those positions. Well, normally you're chosen for one of those kind of deals. It's vetted, usually kind of strangely, but it's vetted by what you have, and you think you need that office, and you put it in there. And then you're in one of those positions, and you make comments when the doors are shut that I don't care how the Bible says it, that's not how we do it. That's someone who carries a so-called righteous position, and they stay righteous because I'm one of those. I'm not beating up elders or anything. I'm just saying it's really easy in our flesh to stand on that and think that you're justified.
Right.
You've been vetted by your own people, and that's really kind of ludicrous when you're looking at it from a kingdom perspective. But that's how we wear it, and that's kind of what the Jews did.
I actually was in a deacon's meeting one time, years ago, long time ago, and one of our deacons literally said that. I
know.
I mean, and he, were you in that one?
Well, I've been in others with the same people.
and I remember because he had his Bible and he slammed it down and he said, "I don't care what that says. We've never done it that way." And I want to hope that he really didn't mean what he was saying.
Yeah, just the passion of the moment.
But it was the passion of the moment. But what you bring up is an interesting point. But he had confidence in the position that he held.
Yeah.
In the declaration that someone had made over him more than he did in the one to whom it really matters, which is Christ. And that's the point that Paul's trying to make, is you're putting your confidence in this position of being a Jew.
Yes.
And even more so of being an Orthodox, law-obeying, righteous Jew. And he's like, you got like more than just being a Jew. He's talking to the people that all their confidence is in doing the right things.
Well, and humans are linear.
Yeah.
So there was a bunch of laws that were handed out in Exodus and Leviticus, but it really wasn't that many. As they started trying to define what those were, it got huge.
Right.
And that was all extra stuff. So in our flesh, it's kind of like, well, they're doing it like this, so if I did it like this, then it's all on you. You're doing it yourself.
Right.
That's the point of it. You can't make yourself righteous.
Well, and if I was a Jew...
Not with a capital R, anyway.
Right. Well, and if I was a Jew reading this, and I had Paul's lineage, circumcised on the 8th day, blah, 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 blah. Doing it all. Even Peter, when he had the vision in Acts of the deal, he's like, I've never touch the unclean thing. I've been doing, and he was walking with the Lord, seeing visions from God through the Holy Spirit, and he's like, I'm still this. If I'm reading this, and my confidence is in what I've done, and it's not even evil. It's just what you know.
Yeah.
Man, I experienced a type of that growing up. I didn't really know it at the time, but I just thought there were certain things you were supposed to do and not do, and if you did those, you were okay.
Yes.
And it's not taught as works-based salvation, and that wasn't even our theology, but I internalized it that way. But the guy reading this, that believes that, reads that and was like, oh, snap! Everything that I know is now just went up on its head.
Yeah.
And not even that. In addition to that, when he says, you can keep the law, but all that does is just tell you how you're messed up. That's really what he was saying.
Yeah.
Keeping the law doesn't make you okay. It just shows you how you're messed up. And then, what is it, verse 21? He says that the very righteousness, let me read it. It says, but now apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been revealed, attested by the law and the prophets. So there's two messages. Number one, following the law is not going to get you there. And he said, and furthermore, it's almost like he says, and furthermore, the righteousness of God is being revealed away from the law. And so if I'm out there and all I have is the law, I feel pretty empty right now reading that. Because I've put all my eggs in one basket, and he said that's not going to get you there. And not only that, the righteousness you need that will protect you from the wrath of God that's coming is actually outside of the law.
Well, it gets kind of confusing. So we're talking about the law and the books. Well, that's what the Bible says. You're not supposed to. You're not supposed to kill. You're not supposed to covet your neighbor's wife. You're not supposed to do all these things. And so, when we're talking about that is righteousness. The Old Testament law is the way the kingdom is.
Yeah.
But you don't have to worry about it in the kingdom.
Right.
So what that means is that's what Adam and Eve were living before the fall. It wasn't enunciated to them, but it was just natural.
Yeah.
So now, Adam and Eve didn't even think about God every day while they were out doing things. It wasn't until they got themselves in trouble and went against exactly what he said to do that they started worrying about where he was at and what he was thinking.
Yeah.
So the law is the righteousness of the kingdom, but it's in its natural form, if that makes sense. We're not in the natural form of it anymore. And so now we try to attain it. We read it, and if I do that and be a zealot in it, and there's nothing wrong with being a zealot, by the way, well,
yeah,
that's somebody who's trying to be righteous. There's nothing wrong with trying to be righteous. It's when you start thinking, well, I'm doing this thing and you're not, so therefore I'm justified and you're not.
Right.
And God's going, it ain't the law by itself. It's me that does the righteous stuff.
Right. Well, and as I was saying earlier, it's easy to read through, and well, we even said this 2 weeks ago. It's easy to read through Romans 3, especially the verse 10 through 18 section, and be like, well, dang, there's no hope. We're all, no one's seeking after God. And it's easy also for me to see in this context the Jew, but I can see it in our own context as well. The person sitting out there going, but wait a minute, I am pursuing God.
Yes.
But I am trying to do what's right. And he says no one seeks after God and no one, understands, blah, blah, blah. And how do you just reconcile those two things?
Well, I am pursuing God. I've got a position in the church. I sing. I hold an office in there.
I went on a mission trip to
supposed
Mexico.
To do? Yeah. That's exactly right. That's if you're trying to live on those things to prove that that's what you are, doing those things and not being sure and trying to figure out what the kingdom's doing, that's a little different.
Well, and because what happens is because we're linear, we tend to go to one extreme or the other.
Yes.
We'd be like, we have to have all of these things to be right before God. And then when we kind of realize, we get into this text and we're like, by themselves, those things are nothing. They're just things.
Yes.
Then we'll sometimes want to go the other direction, and we've seen the church do this, at large. Though I remember when the emergent church came out, it was like, well, you don't really have to do anything then. You're justified by faith, and you're justified by God. And Paul addresses that, and he says, God forbid, and I interpret that as you're an idiot. And that's kind of what he tells me when I read that. And so we want to go one way or the other. And he's not saying in this text, don't pursue righteousness.
Right. That's right.
He's saying don't pursue it as the means to the end of justification. You pursue it because you're justified, not to become justified. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And it talks about this more in chapter 4, because we all think about Abraham being the father of the Hebrews, if you're looking at it in that context. But he accepted God and believed who he was before all that even existed.
Exactly.
So that's getting ahead of the deal there. But the thing about the righteousness is becoming self-righteous by your own justification because you're scared that kingdom's not going to take you. And that's a precipice that actually I think God pushes people to.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get to a point and you go, I've done all I can do. I can't do anymore. And you crack.
Yeah. And
that's a good tool for the kingdom, actually, to do that. It's not fun to be there, but
it's a good place to be in when honestly before the Lord. And what I see in Romans 3 is really a setup for Romans 4.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because he's going to explain when he talks about Abraham's belief before the circumcision, before all of the stuff that was going on. it gives us good. And in verse 4, he uses or chapter 4, he uses an analogy about wages being paid and earned, and we're going to talk about that later. But as we get through this, this is bad news, no one's seeking, no one can do this. Oh, and by the way, you can do all of the law, and that still doesn't matter. I mean, it's just like we're getting beat up, just, Muhammad Ali's coming at us. But then he gets to verse 23. It seems to get worse. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. It's like another round of he's just making sure that we understand. No matter how good you are in this life, it's not enough. And I'm going to use the word to appease. That's not right, but to make things right before God. To make that atonement, which we're about to get to in verse 25, and I'm going to ask you to jump in. But what he does, because he lays this barren landscape of where we are before God without Christ. And it seems hopeless. And then in verse 25, all by its lonesome, he gives us this hope. He gives us he turns the whole story, and I want you to read it in the New American Standard because I like the way it reads better in verse 25.
It's dark in here for old eyes. So I'll start with verse 24. Being justified as a gift by his grace through the redemption which is in Christ Jesus. So here's 25. Whom God displayed publicly as a propitiation in God's blood through faith. So propitiation is actually a really good word for that. Other translations use the word atonement, and that is to appease something.
Yeah.
The word propitiation is not really a Greek word, it's Latin. But when the writers doing the King James, they were looking for, that's one place where they did a really good job. So here's the deal. If Matt's living his own life, righteous or unrighteous, to get right with God, because you have to look at it, I don't know if this is really going to sound right, so let me work through it here. At this point where he's talking about that just before the propitiation, God is very angry because his creation they've known who he is, how he is, what to move. They told us all that in Romans 1.
Right.
And they have deliberately said, up yours, I'm me and I can do as I please. And they don't understand that he is the life giver and the dependency. Without him, you will die.
Yeah.
So, from an eternal point of view, and we're so arrogant that we'll get to a place where I can stand on my own. And you can't even see what the truth of that is.
Right.
You're as ignorant as the day is long, and according to Romans 1, it gets to a point to where you're willfully ignorant. So you do see it in some measure. The only way to atone for this guy is for God to take you out.
Yeah.
Then all your sin is done, but you're no more. And that's an eternal no more.
Right.
So that doesn't mean he takes him out here and he sits on his right hand. So something righteous had to pay for that. And that's what the propitiation is. And so, I have some fancy words here to make it clearer. To propitiate is to appease an offended person. Propitiation is when the offense is dealt with in a way that satisfies the offended person. That sounds really selfish, but God's looking at it, how do I get these guys redeemed?
Yeah.
That's a very simplistic way of thinking about it.
Well, let me jump in there too, because a lot of people have this idea of God that he is a selfish, narcissistic being that wants to be satisfied in the sense that we would understand satisfied in consumption.
Yes.
He's not satisfied in the realm of consumption. It really is, honestly, it's the opposite. He's like, because of his very nature, we're done for because of who he is and how he is, and he recognizes the two cannot meet now.
Yeah.
The two cannot have relationship without Christ, without the propitiation, because of his nature and who he is. That's why you can't go into his presence and not die. You just can't. It's an immutable, unchangeable law of the way things are. And so from his perspective, his satisfaction is, I want you with me.
Yes.
So how can I make that happen? There's only one way.
And the second that Adam and Eve sinned, because before that, I don't know that they could have articulated it, but they knew that God was their life.
Right.
I don't mean I submit to that and I'm going to be a slave to you. That terminology gets used in the New Testament, but he literally is the Son.
Yeah.
Speaking at it in that term. So before they sinned, they never thought anything about it, but they knew it was there and it was great and it was
Right.
peaceful. And then when they deliberately sinned against the word that he had, they felt like they were undone and that he was angry, that they'd ticked Dad off and Dad was going to smite them, when there was no evidence that he'd ever done anything like that before. Right. So they were scared.
Right.
And that's where we are, and that's what Romans 1 is. But the instant that that happened, he already had the plan that he himself was going to come and pay this price, and it was through Christ Jesus that did it. And someday maybe we can talk about this word propitiation and what happens in Revelations 5, the visual of what transpires in there. That's what's going on when this happened.
Right.
So anyway,
well, and the whole point, even really to me, behind all of that, is he lays this blitzkrieg, horrible ground set, for here's who you are without him, and you're going to die. The wrath of God is coming against unrighteousness. Oh, and by the way, you're full of it. Everybody's full of it.
Even if you are a good person.
Even if you're a good person. Even if you're the best Jew, the best Christian, the best deacon, the best pastor, the best elder, whatever. You're on slate for the wrath of God to come against you. Then he says, however, that wrath is going to get stayed for those who have faith, because there is a righteousness that shields you from that. But that righteousness comes from him, apart from the law, apart from your deeds, apart from everything. Which kind of, the way I envision it in my head is he, in the imputation, he puts that righteousness on us, which then allows us to do those righteous deeds underneath that. It's like a dome of covering. We can do all those righteous deeds within the dome of his imputed righteousness, and that makes them good works. Outside of that dome of imputed righteousness, they're just junk. Paul would call them the clanging brass and cymbals. It's nothing. But underneath that, then those are the things ordained before the foundation of the world for us to walk in. But he says, but you don't do that to get the dome, the protection. You do it because of the dome.
Yeah. And
so that's really what he lays out to me in the end of chapter 3.
Well, so the propitiation function, though, so we talked about the anger. He is angry. He's angry at all the unrighteousness and functions that took place out of sheer disobedience. But he provided the way. And so the reason propitiation is such a good word is that when Christ was on the cross, and physically we see him get beat up, and at least intellectually we can look at that and go, wow, that was
awful.
That was awful, and that was something, and he did that just for me. And that's all true. Eternally, every sin that could ever have been committed by you, me, and everybody else was hurled upon him. And it says that God, it's kind of like he turned away from himself in an eternal fashion. And he heaped all that on himself so that he could make the relationship back like it was before Adam and Eve sinned.
Right.
And we can't even comprehend how that can be because we're running from him all the time.
Right.
But that's the way it is from where he's at now because of what he did there.
Right. And that's why I always tell people, if you're worried about, oh, I don't know if I'm saved or not. And, I went through a season of that in my own life. And one of the is because you get so focused on, am I doing everything right? But a good litmus test is when you find yourself out there and you've sinned and you you're rotted, if you run away from him or if you run to him. And when you run to him, that's a great indicator that you understand what he did.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, it's also a good indicator that you don't really understand what he did. You may know the mechanics, you may have said the words and done all the things.
But you have to accept by faith that he did it, even though if you were in his shoes, you would never impart
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it means you come around with your tail tucked between your legs, and you might even be gritting your teeth a little bit. I believe it, even though I don't want to deal with it.
Right. Right.
But come anyway, because he can weather that.
Yeah, well, and it's because there's a thing in verse 26 to me that makes that possible. When God presented him, speaking of Jesus, to demonstrate his righteousness at the present time, and he'd just been talking about how he'd passed over the sins of the past, so that he would be righteous and declare righteous the one who has faith in Jesus. Here's the deal: he did all of this propitiation, so he could be righteous in his judgment of sin. Because if he didn't judge sin, he would no longer be righteous.
Yeah, he wouldn't be God.
He wouldn't be God if he didn't judge sin. So he still had to do that. So Jesus came as the propitiation to take care of that portion and to declare righteous the one who has faith in Jesus. So that dome of righteousness has nothing to do with us.
Right.
It is declared over us by the action that Jesus did in satisfying the wrath of God for us.
Yeah.
And, when you hear people talk about a plenary, substitutionary death of Jesus, the theological terms, that's what it's talking about, is an angry, wrathful God who is righteous in his anger against sin, had to exercise that wrath, or he would no longer be who he is.
Yes. And do it righteously.
And do it righteously, without sin. And
Kingdom righteously, not our righteousness.
Right. And he did that with Jesus on the cross. And as a result of that, he's still righteous, and then declares all of us who have faith in him and what he did, declares us the same righteous. And therefore we have the freedom to walk in these things. So even though Romans 3 says without him you're a bunch of dogs. Oh, and by the way, his best on your best day, what does he said? He said our righteousness is as filthy rags, and that's a really kind way to put what that verse is really saying.
Kind,
I tell people, you don't have to worry about your worst day. When you slip up, you have another drink, you get hammered. All that's horrible. But that's not the part that he says is the problem. It's your best day. When you've done everything right, that's the filthy rag. And everything else cascades behind it.
And you do everything and go, look what I did.
Exactly.
When you do everything right, that's when you go, Lord, thank you for giving me the ability to do that. Yeah. That's the difference between the two.
Exactly. And he ends chapter 3, and I think is a real big setup. And if you have a Bible that has, here's a big word for you, pericopes. Yours doesn't even have, it does. Yeah, it does. Those little subheadings, they're the subheadings. They're called pericopes. I don't know, throw that around at a party, you'll sound smart.
Yeah.
And mine says, boasting is excluded. It's easy for us when we're hitting on all cylinders to be like, look at me. It's like the guy, who's praying with the sinner, I'm so thankful I'm not like this guy. It's so easy to get there, and it creeps up on us. But when we understand what really happened in the propitiation and where we were, according to Romans 3, before the propitiation and without it, in verse 27, he says, where then is boasting? It is excluded. If you catch nothing out of today's teaching, and we're going to wrap up here, and we'll do 4 next week, is no matter how awesome, I was going to say you think you are, but I want to go, no matter how awesome you actually really are. I mean, you're doing all the things, doing all the deeds, doing all the stuff, and you think your heart is pure and is right. All that's great, and maybe it is right. You still have no ability to boast in anything about yourself.
Well, I think it's a little more subtle. Well, subtle might not be the word. We naturally look for affirmation of things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get affirmation and you keep getting affirmation, even if it's not real, you start going, oh, I did do this. I did do this.
Yeah.
I did do this. And it comes very innocently.
Yeah.
You're not messed up because you're looking for affirmation.
Yeah.
If all you're looking for is affirmation to get where you're going, I would tell you God's stirring your pot because he wants you to look up at him. And it is a learned thing. Everybody needs the affirmation to know if that's how you justify or not justify. That's how you measure, am I doing well, am I not doing well? And the fact is, you need to look for the affirmation from the kingdom. And I think that's learned.
Yeah, it is,
That's
for
where
sure.
matured stuff comes from. So don't beat yourself up if that's what you're doing necessarily. Keep pursuing what the Lord is, and all these other things will start working out. That's another part in Romans we'll get to.
Well, and later on he says, for we conclude that a person is justified by faith apart from the works of the law. Or is God the God of the Jews only? He's not the God of the Gentiles too? Yes, of Gentiles too. And that's not really the point. The point I wanted to pull out that was the justification comes by faith and not by the works. We
Yes.
know that. We go to James and he tells us the same thing, but he also puts in this twist of, if it's your faith without works is dead. One of the things that Tim and I say a lot is when we have someone who's pursuing the kingdom, pursuing God, I don't get too jazzed up about whether or not they're going to screw it up.
Yeah.
Because their faith and their heart, 2 Chronicles 16:9, his eyes are looking to and fro, for the heart is perfect and fully devoted to the Lord. So if somebody's got the heart for the Lord and they're pursuing the kingdom and they're not going to do everything just right, I don't get wrapped up in that, because I know that their justification is not in them doing everything just right.
So there would be a time where I would look at somebody and I would get wrapped up in it. And as I
Same.
begin to mature, I would still get wrapped up in it. I just wouldn't say anything. Well, I didn't stew on it, but I started associating the fact that, okay, I see exactly what you're dealing with there. I do it too.
Yeah.
I might not say that because I don't want them to know that.
Right.
That's the hiding part. But over time, it begins to get different. So at my aged self now and the things that I've gone through, I can go back and that's why I can look at people that are pursuing the Lord and they're messing everything up and they're all stressed out because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Have a little patience with yourself, and the fact that you're wanting to pursue the Lord, that's him that gave you that,
Right.
by the way. That's not just
Exactly.
you. And you're trying to figure out the eternal things, and that's the place to be.
Well, and we get caught up too, Tim, in this idea of, well, am I supposed to do X or am I supposed to do Y? Which one does God want me to do? They're both good things. What do we do? And we get in this analysis paralysis of making sure we do the right thing. Now, let me interject that I think there are times where God wants us to go a particular way.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the clearest examples, and I use it all the time, is when we merged churches. I mean, it was as clear as the sun coming up in the east.
Yeah.
God said go do, and there was no other path. We had to. Whether it was good, bad, ugly, whatever, and that's where we were headed. There have been a plethora of other times where the spectrum has been open.
Yeah.
I use this as an example in marital counseling with the prospective groom. The Bible says to provide for your family as best you can in those. Now, have faith and do those things, but if you're able-bodied and can work, go work. Well, which job should I get? I don't know that it matters. I mean, I probably wouldn't go work in a cesspool of sin and, don't become a bartender at a topless bar. That would be a bad thing. But, outside of being in sin, I'm like, just go get a job. You're still following the mandate. The mandates are off, and I think God does that. What should I do in my church? Where should I serve in my church? Which one does God have for me? I don't know. Find a need and fill it. And if it works out for you and God blesses it, keep doing it. If it stresses you out, don't do it. Do it something else. I think we get so wrapped up in the particulars of everything that we forget that He's far more interested in the bigger picture of where's our heart going.
Yes.
And so I have so
But
much.
he will use those circumstances,
Yeah.
whether you bring them on yourself or he orchestrates them
Exactly.
to help you learn that.
Exactly.
And it is a learned thing.
And I guess my admonition to somebody out there right now that's like, I'm in this season of indecision, as I see it all the time, of indecision. Where do I go? It hints to me and it smacks to me of what the Jew in this passage was dealing with. I got to do everything just right. Well, there are rights and wrongs in the world. Please don't misunderstand me. But your justification and your rightness before God is primarily dependent on your faith and your heart towards Him and the kingdom. He's going to work out all of those other things. I tell people all the time, love God and do your best.
Yeah.
Just love God and do your best. That doesn't mean you're going to make every decision correctly. That doesn't mean you're going to, because Romans 8:28 will tell us, and other, I mean, actually the rest of that chapter is really good too. We'll get there later. That even if you screw it up, he's already redeemed it if your heart's before him. He's going to be like, it would have been better if you'd have gone right, but you went left. All right, well, let's teach you what you need to know out of that. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened in my own walk is, looking back, it would have been better to do this or that or go a different way. But I am at the place that I am, good, bad, or ugly, because of the decisions that I made and the redemption that he brought in them. He has declared the end from the beginning according to the scriptures. And so I have to remind myself, so what happens in the middle does not stress him out.
Yeah.
He has declared the end from the beginning. We were watching some TV show the other day. I don't remember what it was. And, it doesn't matter. But they were doing time travel. And, you can't change anything in the past because it'll change everything, all this stuff.
Right.
And it just kind of got tickled. And I was like, God has declared the end from the beginning and exists in both somehow. And he's in the middle. And I'm like, even our science fiction movies can't comprehend how vast he is to be able to see past the minutia of our decisions. Yeah. Even in this text, he says he has the capacity to overlook the sins of the past in this text to get them to a place. And it's not that those sins weren't sin, and it wasn't that they weren't bad. It wasn't that they weren't an offense to a holy God. He was just already moving to a bigger place.
Yes.
And so I want to encourage you that, yes, without Christ, no one seeks after God and no one's righteous. But with all of your righteousness and with all of your good deeds, as wonderful as they may be, it's the faith in the man Jesus Christ that brings about justification before God. And if you can get that nailed down, the details I won't even like to say will take care of themselves or work themselves out, because sometimes they just simply don't work themselves out. You just have to live in the muck and the mire sometimes. But your faith in the Lord justifies you before Christ. And that is the hope that it's not even that you don't have to boast anymore. When you really understand that, you're compelled not to anymore, because you start giving you said it a while ago, it's not that, oh, look what I did. It's look what God allowed me to do.
Yeah.
And that seems like a little shift, but it's really it's a huge, magnanimous thing. To recognize that I got up this morning and breathed, not because I'm a young, healthy male, but because God chose for me to do so.
And it's that literal.
It is.
But it takes time, I would tell you, to believe that. I think he puts an inkling in you, and you believe that maybe it starts off, well, there is a God. You just keep pursuing it, because in Romans 1 it says that everything you see has been so. Then just take that and go with it. Maybe you will get legalistic. Anybody that pursues the Lord gets legalistic at some point in their walk. I promise you that. Always. But that still is, it's God, what's the word I'm looking for? It's
part of the process.
It is part of the process. And he takes you, see, how does the scripture say it? From glory to glory. Mm-hmm. That's what that is. And it's never ending in our whole life. All the things that I know and all the things that I think I know, and I know some things that are much deeper than what they were 30 years ago. And so I can look at things now and see that doesn't make my life any easier.
Right.
Well, even when you were preaching about that, it's by trial.
Yeah.
And I must be doing well with the Lord because I got plenty of money. I don't really have any of these other stresses, and that's true. He may be doing that, but that's not how he measures it. Our life here is not finished by that regard, and I have to remind myself of that all the time.
Right.
And I still go through all the same frustrations. I regress all the time.
Right.
But I can recover a lot faster.
Yeah, and that's the thing is just because you're in the middle of, of the pile, don't feel like God is abandoning you. I'm working on a sermon right now and a teaching, and the title's gonna freak somebody out, I know, but it was that one. It's basically the one time that Jesus spoke something that wasn't true, and and as far as I know from the scriptures, it only happened one time. He didn't lie, he didn't sin, so don't turn off the broadcast. Hear me out. It's coming. But it's just a great example of how we don't see the whole pattern, and we don't see the whole thing. And he says it to us in Romans 3, and he's going to in Romans 4 as well. You hang on to the pattern maker,
Yeah.
and the pattern becomes less significant.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, thanks for joining us today. We went a little long today, but glad you stayed with us. If you stayed with us, I don't even know if anybody's out there. But here it is. Thanks for letting us, being with us today, joining us as we help you learn, teach, repeat. Be in prayer for our ministry. We've got several things, like I said, coming up. We do need to do a return trip to Mexico to do some more training with another large group of pastors down there. That's just in the idea phase. I don't know when or how or what that's going to look like, but we just start praying over that now. And if you are interested in hearing about this last trip and want to hear it done live, we'll be at Central Baptist Church in Athens, July the 25th at 6 p.m. Service starts, and we'll be speaking. There'll be several testimonies given. I'll be bringing a little word, and we'll show some videos and pictures. You got anything before we go?
No.
All right. Thank y'all for joining us. We love you and we appreciate you. And we'll try to be back here next week on time as Friday Live. We appreciate you. Love you. Bye-bye.
All right.